Welcome back, my friends, for another EUNORAU electric bike review. Today's e-bike is the FAT-AWD. Here it is behind me. This is the second bike that I have reviewed from EUNORAU this year, and I had a lot of fun with this one. I mean, as you can see from the mud splatters all over it, I've been out doing some trail riding, adventuring, exploring, really had a good time. This is a very interesting bike for me because it's a dual motor, right? So it's you've got hub motors in the front and the rear wheel. You can switch on the fly if you want to use both motors or just use one or the other. You can use just the front one if you want. And they have different wattages in the motors, which is also something you don't see a lot on these dual motor bikes. So you've got a 350 watt motor in the back here and then 250 watts up front. So when you're using both of them, you get 600 watts of power, and it feels quite powerful then. It accelerates very quickly. I tackled some really steep hills in the ride test, did great on those. But if you want to, like, let's say maybe you're riding in the city, you're looking to really maximize your range, you want to use it for commuting for a day or something like that, you can switch it over to just use the front motor, and you do that with this switch up here on the handlebar here. You can, right now I have it in front, you can put it in the middle for both, or switch it over to the back to use only the rear. So if you have it over in the front one, 250 watts of power, not a whole lot of power, but it's still enough to make pedaling a lot easier. So if you wanted to flip it over into front motor mode, you could probably get an easy like 60 to 80 miles of range or more, and that's just using the standard battery pack, which is 16 amp hour. Now they have an upgraded battery pack, bumps it all the way up to 25 amp hour if you really wanted to maximize your range, but I think you'll be fine just with the standard one. In my range test, I wanted to see how far I could get if I was using both motors, full power assist, using the throttle a lot, and I still got a long ways. You can get probably 25 to 30 miles using that. So just the single motor and standard battery, you could get a long ways here. And I love the switching on the fly. That's there's a lot of dual motor bikes where if you wanted to switch which motor that you're using, you have to bring it to a stop, go into your display settings and configure something. But here you can just flip the switch and you're all set. Let's talk a little bit about EUNORAU, the company, and warranty and stuff like that before we dive into the rest of the specs on the bike here. Now, EUNORAU has been selling bikes for quite a long time now, and they used to be known more as like an online direct-to-consumer brand, but they have really expanded their dealer network. They have over 400 dealers worldwide. There's a ton of those in North America, and that really is the best way to buy a bike from EUNORAU, whether it's the FAT-AWD or another one, is get into a dealer. If you check the full written review, we've got a link to their dealer page so that you can find one near you. When you go into a dealer, you can actually try it out to see if it fits you, because this is a one-size-fits-all frame. There's only one size that you can get for it. And if you're really tall like me, I'm 6'3", I'm just a little bit too tall for this bike. And unfortunately, this does happen for me with a lot of electric bikes. They just don't make them for my height. But I'm way taller than average. Most people, I think, will fit very well on here. And like any electric bike, you can do stuff to dial it in for your fit. You can get a different stem on there that you can adjust. You can get a longer seat post or a different saddle if you want. And that's an advantage of buying through a dealer, is you can get all of that done at the purchase. And sometimes, won't even cost extra to swap some of those parts out to suit it to your liking. So try to find a dealer if you can. If not, you can buy it online still, and it's amazingly affordable too. $1,559 right now, which for a dual motor fat tire electric bike, that's really awesome. Now there are some concessions that they had to make in order to get the prices down. We'll talk about those in just a minute. To round things out, just kind of talking about EUNORAU, their warranty, it's really impressive. A lot of electric bikes these days only have a 1-year warranty that covers all of the parts. With EUNORAU, you get 5 years of coverage for the frame, 2 years of coverage for the battery, and then most of the other components are at 1 year. And that's really awesome. Like, that's one of the better ones out there in the industry. So it's good to see that they're standing behind their products. They've been working on building the dealer network. They really care about providing that long-term support. Okay, let's talk some more about the components on the FAT-AWD. Now, I already mentioned the motors. Got them in the front and the rear wheel. The pedal assist sensor is a cadence sensor mounted in the bottom bracket here. Now you can see it right behind the chain ring. It is a 12 magnet sensor, which means it's good high resolution, but it still has a delay. So if you've never ridden on an electric bike before, torque is really kind of the best, most responsive. It responds to how much pressure you put on the pedals, but a cadence sensor like this, that's just responding to cycling the pedals around. It doesn't matter if you're putting almost no pressure on, as long as you are pedaling, then it kicks in, and the assist level doesn't vary. It's just whatever you set it to on the control control pad is what level you get if you're pedaling at any speed. Now this is actually better for some people than a torque sensor, because a torque sensor requires that pressure on the pedals. So if you've maybe had a knee injury and your knees just aren't very good, then a torque sensor would actually be a bad idea, and you'd be better off with a cadence sensor. This is another reason why it'd be good to, you know, get in and test ride one of these, see if it worked out for you. The drivetrain here, Shimano Altus in the back, so that's a step up actually. Shimano Tourney is their entry level, so you get a little bit higher quality and performance out of this. We've got the bash guard here, which helps to keep the chain on and you keep stuff from getting stuck in it. And I took it over some pretty rough stuff and did not lose the chain or have any issues there. So I think it's doing a good job. I love that they included the derailleur cage back here. This is nice in shipping to keep the derailleur from getting knocked out of shape, but also just for riding off trail, or maybe when you're storing the bike so that, you know, the derailleur doesn't get hit and knocked out of tune. This bike is pretty fully loaded with accessories too. We've got this awesome rear rack back here. I mean, this thing is huge. It's got a little, you know, whatever. I still need to look up what these are called, but you can hold stuff down with this, or it can provide like a backing if you wanted to put like some kind of like a case or bigger storage thing on the back. Good sturdy rack. You can hold up to 55 pounds on it. Full length, full coverage fenders. These are aluminum alloy, so they're nice and lightweight. They won't, you know, they won't rust if they get dinged up like steel might. So these are my favorite fenders, honestly. They don't rattle like plastic ones do. Good full coverage from them on here too. We've got lights as well, semi-integrated. So the front light up here, this headlight is fully integrated, so you can operate that, draws from the main battery. The rear light, however, is independent. So there's a switch on the bottom, you've got to flip to turn that on and off. And that's, you know, I wish it was integrated as well, because it's very easy to, you know, turn that on when you're out riding at night, and then, you know, you forget to turn it off when you get back home. It stays on all night and then it's dead the next time. So, you know, you just got to get used to remembering that. But still, you know, it's a light. It makes you a lot more visible at night, so it's good to have that for safety. One other concession that they had to make here to, I think, help just to get the price down so impressively low is the brakes. These are mechanical disc brakes back here, 160 millimeter rotors, and they're like, I think, just adequate enough for the bike. I would really like to see hydraulic ones on here, just because it's a big bike. You know, it's tipping the scales at close to 80 pounds. Mechanical brakes take more grip force to actuate them to actually get good stopping power. So when you have a big heavy bike like this, you've got to really put some force in there to bring it to a stop. But keep in mind, it is a class 2, which means it's got a top speed of 20 miles per hour, whether that's pedal assist or throttle. So you shouldn't be going up in, you know, insane speeds on this. You could take it downhill and get going even faster. I did that in one of my ride test videos. I got going up to around 30-35 miles per hour, and it did a good job stopping it, but I really did have to clamp down on those levers. So that is something to keep in mind. Is that there's not really any suspension. There's sort of suspension. You've got the suspension seat post on here, but this is a pretty basic one. I mean, we're talking 20-25 millimeters of travel on it, so it helps a little bit, but not a lot. Really, where your suspension comes from is actually from the fat tires. Now, I've got them fully inflated, pretty close to the max pressure of 30 psi, which is better for, you know, efficiency and speed. But if you want more comfort, you can lower those down. And actually, with fat tires, you can lower them down as far as 5 psi. So if you wanted to ride on like sand, you're at the beach, or maybe you're riding in snow in the winter, you can lower that all the way down. You get amazing traction. You can ride on anything. Just keep in mind, that's really going to hurt your range. You lose a lot of your efficiency, but you know, you get a lot of ride comfort. So if you want a bit more of a comfortable ride, I would set those maybe to like 20 psi, you know, somewhere 15 to 20, kind of in the middle. That'll be a lot better. But you know, if you're going for comfort, this is maybe not the bike for you. This is not very comfortable out of the box. Some other things are just the saddle. Like if you look at this, is a very aggressive, like racing style saddle. So it's good for pedaling. You're not going to get any chafing, but it's not very comfortable to ride for long distances. Fortunately, saddles are super easy to switch. So if you wanted to get something, you know, a little bit wider, a little bit more cushion on it, that'd be easy to swap out. It's a very forward riding stance too. Here, if you look at this clip of me sitting on it, it's yeah, you're sitting pretty forward. And that's because the stem's not adjustable. It's just a straight forward stem on here. Now I like that. I prefer to sit more forward. I find it a lot more comfortable than sitting upright. But if you wanted to switch that, again, that is a very easy modification. You just swap out the stem for something adjustable or just for a more upright one, and then boom, you're sitting upright. So, you know, like I was saying, that this is not a super comfortable bike like out of the box, but there's a lot of very cheap modifications you could do to dial it in if you're looking for a bit more comfortable a ride instead of a more like aggressive riding one. So, you know, look into that, especially if you're buying it at a dealer. Like that's super easy to do and might not even cost you anything extra. Great mounting for the battery here, mounted low in the down tube. This helps keep the center of gravity for the bike down. It's actually got a USB port on the side here too, so you can pop that open if you need to charge your phone on the go. You could connect it up here, or just charging other devices when you have the battery off the bike. That's a great feature. Really the only downside for the battery, honestly, and this is like just me being nitpicky here, is that the charging port is down here on the very bottom on the left side. And really the downside of having it over here is that the pedals can run into it. So if you are charging the battery on the bike and then maybe you have to move it around or something, be sure that the pedals don't, you know, collide with this area, because then you could bend your charging cord and mess things up. That's, you know, like I said, just me being nitpicky. It's better to just take the battery off the bike and charge it that way. Now, if you do order this bike online instead of going to get it in at a dealer, just keep in mind you'll have to, you know, do the assembly, the final assembly on it yourself. And since it's a big fat tire bike, it's going to be, you might want someone to help you out unless you're, you know, really big and strong, confident in lifting that much weight. There's a little bit extra to do with this bike. Whenever you order any bike online, typically you have to, you know, mount on the handlebars, put on the front wheel, and then you also have to, you know, make sure the brakes and the derailleur and everything are lined up and tuned correctly. Sometimes they get knocked a little bit out of true during shipping. Now for this one, since it's dual motor, you also have to set up the front wheel cord here. There's just a cable that you have to plug in and, you know, mount this on. It's really honestly pretty simple. It adds another, you know, 2 minutes to the normal assembly process, but it is a little bit more to do. The front wheel is heavier having that motor in it. And really, they're not that difficult to assemble. It's more of just like a time-consuming thing. EUNORAU has great assembly videos on their website. I'll have a link for that in the full written review. So if you're putting it together yourself, you should have no problem. All right, guys, ride test time with the EUNORAU FAT-AWD. Now, as you can see here, it's a little bit small for me, but pretty close. Now, keep in mind, I'm pretty tall at 6'3", so in a perfect world, I would like a little bit bigger of a bike than this, but it should still work out pretty well. I've got the seat raised up to the maximum height. Let me just jump on it here so you can see the riding position is fairly forward. Like, you know, not quite aggressive, but this is not a cruiser where you'd be, you know, sitting more upright. The stem does not adjust, so this is what you've got to work with. You could replace the stem if you wanted to. But anyway, enough talk. Let's do some riding around. I'm going to start off just in assist level 1 and just kind of ride it like a bike, you know, low level of assist just to see how it feels. So here we go. Assist level 1 feels pretty peppy right now, but that's because I've got both motors turned on. Now there's a switch on the right side of the handlebar here where you can just switch it over and say like, oh, I just want the front or just the rear or both. You can switch on the fly, which there's a lot of dual motor bikes you can't do that. You have to go into the display settings and stop to get that switched over. So very cool to be able to do that on the fly. Let's see, what motor am I on? I think I'm on just the rear motor right now and just in level 1. So I'm gonna just kind of accelerate, pedal a bit here. I'm in gear 3. And it's very easy to ride even on this low assist level. I'm getting a little bit of exercise, but nothing too crazy. Let's bump the assist up level 3. And even that feels quite a bit more peppy just using the one motor. A little brake test. The brakes feel decent. They definitely could be improved if they were hydraulic brakes. That's probably the one miss on this bike, in my opinion, is that you've got a big, heavy bike, but only mechanical brakes. Now, there are big 4-finger levers, so it's pretty easy to get enough pressure on there to, you know, be able to stop quickly. But keep in mind, if you're doing any like serious downhill stuff, they might not be more powerful enough. The gears seem to be shifting pretty smoothly. I did not have to do anything to adjust this derailleur when I first got the bike. Shift all the way up into level 7 maximum gear. And yeah, it feels good, perfectly dialed in. I didn't have to adjust the brakes either, which is nice. And you never know what you're gonna get when you have a bike you have to assemble yourself. Sometimes everything just lined up out of the box, and sometimes things get a little bent out of shape and you have to tune your brakes, tune your derailleur, do a lot of work before you can actually ride it. Let's see, I think I'm gonna switch it over to just the front now. Yep. So the front motor is the lowest power one. It's a unique setup here. So we've got 350 watts in the back, 250 up front. So if you're trying to really be efficient on power, maximize your range, you'd want to use only the front. Now the front wheel doesn't get as good a traction. There's not as much weight on it, but it's still enough power that when you're riding it around in the city, more than enough to, you know, make it an easy ride. I'm only in 3 right here. Let's put it up to 5. And like I can really take off. But of course, the fun of having a dual motor bike is that you actually use both motors. So let's give the acceleration with that a try. So I'm cruising at about 10 miles an hour right here, and I'm just gonna hit the throttle with both motors. Just takes off. Very, very powerful. Ton of torque when you're using both motors. Super fun. Now that's using a lot of power, of course, so if you're trying to maximize your range, you don't want to be doing this all the time. But if you're maybe doing some off-road exploring, having the dual motors, all that torque, all that traction, that can be a lot of fun. We'll do a little more extreme riding like that a little bit later. I just wanted to, you know, demo the power for you guys here on the street. Before we do the range test, let's talk about range for an electric bike. Now this is a very volatile topic. People argue about it all the time. Manufacturers always have some kind of a range figure for their electric bikes, but it's almost always a best case scenario. You know, up to 80 miles of range or something like that. But that's, you know, that's best case scenario, ideal conditions. You're a lightweight rider, you're riding on flat ground, you've got it on low levels of assist. I think that's where they come up with a lot of those figures because it sounds more impressive. But range is going to vary wildly. You know, it depends on how heavy you are, what kind of terrain you're riding on. Is it steep hills? Is it flat ground? Is it smooth pavement? Is it, you know, gravel and dirt and riding through underbrush off-road? All of these factors, you know, what level of assist? You know, how are you on max level of assist? You're juicing the throttle, or do you have it all the way down in eco mode? So your maximum range is going to vary wildly based on all of those and more factors. So what I'm going to test for today is the only range figure that I personally care about, which is worst case scenario range. I want to know if I'm riding this bike hard, I'm going up and down hills, I have it on full throttle. For this bike, I'm going to use both the front and back motor. I'll have it in dual motor mode the entire time. I'm really going to be pushing it. I want to know if I'm just going, you know, all out, how far can I get with electric assist in that, you know, worst case scenario. And since this is a bike, if I do run out of juice somewhere out in the middle of nowhere, I can still pedal at home. It's not the end of the world. A couple of other things to note that do impact a range test for a bike like this. It's a fat tire bike, so I could have the pressure in the tires lowered way down. I've got them all the way filled up just about to the max PSI of 30 right now, which gives me more efficiency, better speed. Now you can lower these down as low as 5 PSI if you wanted to tackle sand or snow, really loose terrain, but that really hurts your range. It cuts down on the efficiency by a significant amount. So I'm not gonna do that for today. I'm riding on pavement, I'm riding on trails. I don't need that low pressure. All right, so we started off this fully charged battery with 4.5 miles on the trip odometer. I've ridden it a little bit already today. I haven't figured out how to reset the trip odometer yet. The settings are a little cryptic on the display, but that's not important right now. Let's see, we got to turn the headlight on. I'm going to flip this into dual motor mode, put the assist slip all the way to level 5. All right, let's take it away. Tons of power getting up to the top speed when you're in the highest level of assist. Very easy. There we are, already at 20. Trying to pedal past 20 is a lot of work. It's a heavy bike, and also, you know, I'm too big for it. I can't get full leg extensions, so trying to push past 20 miles per hour is kind of pointless on this thing. It's a little too tanky for that. I'm gonna go off the beaten path a bit here and do some trail riding. This is actually gonna be a great test, I think, because it is muddy. It's been raining a lot the last couple of days, so let's see how those fenders do. when you're at full battery, that front wheel will skid when you're taking off on the throttle. It's got a lot of power, and it's only a 250 watt motor, I think, up front, but still pretty torquey. I do find myself standing up on the pedals for a lot of the more bumpy stuff, which, you know, it's without suspension back there, it is really not that comfortable. Oh boy, we got like real mud water, a little bit of swamp action. See if we can make it up right here. Oh yeah, I am just riding on the throttle. That was pretty impressive hill climbing. So when you've got both wheels engaged, no problem. I'm actually gonna turn the assist down out here just because since it's a cadence sensor, it's all or nothing when you're using pedal assist, and it's a little bit too peppy for me right now. Here we go. Woo! A nice thing about this bike is that even if you're in a lower assist, like let's say we're all the way down here at level 1, very light on the pedal assist, but you still get full power from the throttle if you need it. So you can ride along on this low assist level, and then if you get to a little area you need a little bit extra juice, just hit the throttle and woo, really takes off. Like right here, hit the throttle, climb right up the hill without needing to change the pedal assist level. But I am going to change it up now, is trying to do a full power range test here. All right. Back on the trail. Let's take a quick stop. I just want to see how the fenders did. Now I've got mud on the insides of both of my pant legs. I can definitely see some mud and stuff splattered on the, the underside of the bottom bar here, a little bit on the side of the battery. So definitely did get some splatters, but those were straight up heavy mud and puddles. So that's to be expected. I don't think I've ever ridden on a bike that was perfect for going through that kind of stuff. All right, let's keep on chucking. Woohoo! Just using the throttle right now. This, I think, is where this bike can really shine. Just tearing around on these trails. Feels surprisingly nimble for, an 80-ish pound fat tire bike too. I think that helps with the frame just being a little bit smaller, having the forward riding stance. Well, I guess we're not going that way. I think EUNORAU did make a good choice of tread for these tires. So they're kind of hybrid, at least as far as fat tires go. They're not super knobby, but they're not slicks either. So it does really well. It feels nice on, off the trail, riding on something like this, dirt, gravel, rocks, or on pavement. Still sounds pretty good. Still feels nice and smooth. We are just under 5 miles into the range test, and the battery's already dripped down to about 80%. Now, I don't know exactly. It's down to, 4 out of 5 bars. So it's not a super precise battery level indicator, Now, some e-bikes, including some of EUNORAU's other bikes, like the e-Torque, for example, has a percentage on there. So you get a much better idea of exactly how much battery you have. So right now we have roughly 80%, just under 5 miles. So you go in this way using both motors, it's not going to take us too long to really burn through here. Pedaling this bike for a long time is not comfortable. Some of that's because I'm really tall, right? But the saddle is very aggressive, not comfy to sit on. And yeah, the frame is so small for me, I can't extend my legs very well, so it's, it doesn't feel great on my knees. It's not an ideal setup for like long-range pedaling, which is why I've been relying on the throttle a lot instead of pedaling, because it feels better, it's more fun. Kind of fun to just like stand up on the pedals and hit the throttle, zoom around. Check that out. River is very high right now. Wow, look at that. Look at that, just accelerate right up these hills. Not pedaling at all. Ooh. You can really hear the chain bouncing around on some of those bumps, but seems fine though. Did not jump off. Coming into the town of Bellevue now. Awesome scenic little spot out here to the west, northwest-ish of Fort Collins. It's a really fun loop to do because we can do, find some steep hills out here. Fort Collins is not known for their hills, so we gotta come out here to the foothills proper to find them. We are coming up on a long hill that's a pretty good incline, so we're gonna see what we can do. We're 10 miles in, still says we're at 80%. So far so good. Accelerating up the hill. Seem to be topping out at about 15 miles per hour. 16, there we go, 17, 18, all right. I'm really not pedaling very hard. It's a very uncomfortable pedaling position for me, so I'm not putting a whole lot into it. As you can hear, I'm not out of breath. We're maintaining 19 miles an hour now, so we tore up that hill, no problem. But check that out, we're down to 60% on the battery, so I did take a pretty big chomp out of it. Now let's see what kind of coasting speed we can build up here. We're at 25 already. $30. $32. Now let's see what the brakes can do. Pretty decent stopping performance from the brakes. It was a longer stopping distance than I would like. I probably could have squeezed a bit harder, but I was putting a lot of pressure on them. You know, those mechanical brakes, they require on a lot more actuation force to get your full stopping power, but did pretty well. When I was actually going, 32, 33 miles per hour there, the bike felt very stable, rock solid, honestly. I felt perfectly safe doing that. This is the really steep hill. So I want to see what the throttle can do. This is maybe a little bit unfair to the bike because we've been riding a lot. We're down to 60% power. Your power declines as the battery does. You know, once you get down to half or below, it's a pretty noticeable difference, but you know, what the heck? Still in dual motors. Let's just fire it up on the throttle up this incline here. And we are accelerating. 10 miles an hour already. There's 15. We hit up to 18. So, oh yeah. Even on, you know, only 60% charge, FAT-AWD is up to the task. Now, the battery on EUNORAU's bikes, at least the two that I've ridden, is asymmetrical. As you can see here, it sticks out on the left side, but not on the right. Now, I haven't really mentioned this yet. I wanted to see how it felt, and for the most part, I don't notice anything weird with the balance of the bike when I'm riding it, with the exception of riding no-handed. Whenever I start trying to ride no-handed, I feel like it's trying to pull just a little bit over to the left, which makes sense since the battery is, you know, there's more weight of it on the left side. So it does make a difference for your balance while riding. I think it's a very slight difference. And unless you're riding no-handed like me, you probably won't notice it, but it is still something that you should be aware of. That's impressive. Still ripping up the hills. We've already done almost 20 miles of very aggressive, high power use riding, and still just zooming right up those hills on the throttle, no problem. Okay, friends, I am calling it a wrap for the ride test. Now, after 18 miles even of very aggressive, hard riding, honestly, most of, well, probably half of which was using the throttle, we're down to 40% battery remaining. So I think if you were to keep pushing it in this kind of a scenario where you're using both motors and using the throttle a lot, you could probably expect a range of around 25 miles, maybe 30 miles of kind of worst case scenario maximum range. That's if you ran the battery all the way out to 0%, which you should try not to do. So maybe 25 miles is a kind of a good figure for that. What didn't have enough range is me. Like, my butt hurts. It's just not a very comfortable bike for me to ride. Now, like I've said, some of that is because of my height. I'm too big for the bike, but that's not all of it. You know, some other stuff to highlight on here, one of which is just how aggressive the saddle is. I mean, this thing is, you know, this is like a racing saddle here. This thing is not comfy to sit on for a long time. The seat post is also really short. So if I like pop this out, you can see like it's I mean, what is this, a 200 millimeter maybe? So you can't raise it very high if you've got long legs like me, so that certainly contributes. Lets you get a look at the damage from riding through all that mud, water, off-road adventuring. The bike got pretty dirty, especially looking on the underside here. A lot of mud around the bottom bracket. The fenders, you know, did a decent job for the areas that they cover up here, which is good. If you're going to be doing off-road riding like this, trail stuff, it is going to get pretty dirty. Okay, friends, that is a wrap for the FAT-AWD. Now, even though this one's, you know, really just a little bit too small for me, I still had an awesome time breaking it in. I love the dual motor design where you can switch on the fly and the lower power front hub motor. Like, just the amount of efficiency and range you can get having that setup is really well done. And this is a very versatile bike. Like, you could modify it to, you know, use it like kind of like a city commuter, and then also be able to get out and do some trails and stuff. You could turn it into a hunting bike very easily as well, which I think, you know, they're really going for with having the camo paint on here. If you do decide to go with this color, they do have other ones. But yeah, it's very versatile. I would probably do some tweaking and modifying to it if it was mine, to make it just like a little bit more comfortable for doing those longer range trips. But out of the box, I think it's solid, and you should, you know, if you're looking for a dual motor fat tire bike, you should definitely check it out, especially at this price point. Like, fantastic. All right, guys, if you got questions, comments, anything like that on this review, you can chime in down in the comments section below, or you can head on over to electrifiedreviews.com for the full written review here. We've got even more details. We've got all of the specs. We've got search and compare tools. We've got a comment section there as well. Yeah, let us know what you think, and thanks for coming along. I'll catch you in the next video.